I'm Leo Walder for KitGuru. This is Leo Says number 9. I'm doing this piece between Christmas and New Year, so you might see it at the end of 2017 or possibly the beginning of 2018. So either this is to wrap up 2017 or to start 2018. Oh, the jeopardy, oh, the thrill. Good news today is that Apple is going to slash the price of phone batteries from $79 to $29. So in the UK, what's that? £79, £29 probably, maybe even more. This is obviously to do with them being sued when they started throttling phone speeds because batteries, when they get to a certain state in their life and they have only 30 or 40% charge remaining, could suddenly shut down to protect the phone. So that Apple considered the safe bet was to slow the phones instead. And this has caused problems, threats of lawsuits, blah, blah, to which I say good luck suing Apple. I mean, how many lawyers can they afford? But still, Apple's cutting the price of batteries. Therefore, if your battery starts to get old, you can replace it for less money. It's still a fiddly process in the phones I've worked with, but what it's like with the new ones, I hate to think. And they're also going to produce software to help you monitor your iPhone battery, which is nice. I guess it's going to say X charges remaining until you need to put a new battery in it. We shall see how that one works out, but at least it sounds like progress, and certainly better than just a covert cutting of the speed of your phone without telling you. Even if they were to throttle the phone but advise you they'd throttled it to protect the battery or whatever, you could go with that, you could understand that. But the way they were going about it didn't seem right. So it would appear we have a resolution, and that's good news. News also today here in the UK, more of a British story. There's a committee in our Parliament which is chaired by a chap called Damian Collins MP, Member of Parliament. He is chairman of Department of Culture, Media and Sports, a select committee. It's investigating whether or not there was fake news. This is to do with the EU referendum that we held over a year ago now about whether or not we the UK should leave the EU. And there are allegations of all sorts of fake news, those pesky Russians stirring things up. You know, if they could get fake news out there on Facebook and Twitter in particular, they could influence people and cause all sorts of turmoil. And the allegation is that that is what happened. So this chap Damian Collins and his committee summoned the likes of Facebook and Twitter to give evidence to explain what had happened, and they haven't responded. They've essentially just not given over any information. Facebook is notoriously cagey with its data. It has reams of data on us all, and it doesn't tell you what's going on. And they're in a funny position, Facebook and Twitter and the other media companies, particularly those two, because they make their money from selling advertising, obviously. And clearly the premise is that they are massive influencers. So by carrying a certain story, carrying adverts or whatever, the people will see it and will respond, and therefore they will be influenced by Facebook and Twitter. This logically means that if other people are putting bad adverts out there and bad news and fake news, they can influence people to vote one way or another in a two-way referendum rather. And that is the allegation. The snag for Facebook and Twitter here is obvious. On the one hand, if they were sucked into this whole thing and they did indeed receive advertising from dodgy people, let's call them Russians, and that influenced people in a bad way, then they've become part of the plot, as it were. If, on the other hand, they did receive advertising and it had no impact on the outcome, then that means actually their entire advertising model is broken. You can advertise with Facebook and Twitter, but it doesn't get you any return. And unless you actually have proper metrics that tell you that advertising does get a return, why are you going to do it again? So they are in a bit of a bind. But the funny thing is that the UK Parliament has no hold or leverage over Facebook and Twitter and the other American companies whatsoever. None, just none. The only people that work for those companies in the UK, they sell adverts and then generally seem to be booked through Ireland anyway, Air, Republic of. So basically, our chap's jumping up and down. He's very, very shouty about this, and he's given them till, I think, the 18th of January to come up with some data. And if they don't, he's going to apparently generate bad publicity for them. So there we go. I mean, I'm sure Facebook are quaking in their boots about this. I mean, Twitter, let's face it, they've got so much publicity at the moment just because people use the platform, even though the content is generally nonsense, that I really cannot begin to imagine that Damian Collins MP, remember that name because he's going to go places, that he's exactly going to bring Mark Zuckerberg to the table. Not for 1 second do I believe that. I would be vaguely interested to know whether there is any truth in this fake advertising, fake news kind of malarkey with the Russians. I suspect we're never going to find out one way or the other. AMD, how many times have I said AMD in the past few weeks? It seems to be all the time. They have confirmed that Zen 2, which is the update for Zen Ryzen, which is the die shrink, presumably the die shrink, and presumably the same architecture and minimal changes, has been confirmed for Q1 2018, which we've just assumed. And we're assuming it's going to be debuted at CES in just a couple of weeks' time, and then it'll be on sale soon after. And I think February, March seems quite definite, but let's call it February for the time being. So that's all lovely. Model codes are going to be 2000 series. Okay, so Ryzen 7, presumably 2000 something or other. 5.3 the same. I don't think for 1 second there'll be a Ryzen 9, but if there is, that'll be interesting. And the new CPUs will be compatible with AM4 and existing chipsets. That now seems like solid information. And all good, and backwards and forwards compatible would be lovely, and we'd all be happy. Got your Ryzen current system, take out the processor, put in a new one, gain 400 or so megahertz, if that's how it works. End of story. If you can be, want to pay the money, then great. However, there are reports from the PCI-SIG, so special interest group, of an AMD 400 series chipsets, codename Promontory. Now, the thing is that is the codename used for the current 300 series chipsets, and the spec PCI Express Gen 3, USB 3.1 Gen 2, NVMe, that's the same. I mean, there's no difference. Those could be all the same features of X370 and B350. So where on earth 400 series chipsets come into the equation, I cannot begin to see, unless there isn't a full backwards and forwards compatibility with the new processors and the existing platforms. So maybe you'll need the new chipset to get some extra feature. I honestly struggle to believe that. Be interested to see. I'm wondering if that's just a naming change. So Intel is currently on the 300 series with Coffee Lake, and AMD is currently on the 300 series. AMD moves to 400 series. 400 bigger than 300. Therefore better, huh? And they obviously have more cores than Coffee Lake. So could be. I mean, if they're changing chipsets just for a naming thing, bit childish. If there's some feature as well, okay. But the new chipsets suggest not fully backwards forwards compatible. Therefore, AM4 through to 2020, yeah, kind of. But the details of that, I want to see how that one pans out, because I think that's just game playing. I'm not concerned by this at the moment, but potentially that's not great. There's another AMD story to come, but first something about Corsair. Corsair are a company I have huge respect for. They sell a colossal range of products, and when they pitched up at Computex this year, as is in 2017, in other words 6 months ago, they showed off some custom loop hardware. So I was interested to see where they went. I did not expect, however, them to go down this route, which is essentially they've employed, to use a polite word, a bunch of people from EKWB. So in November, the CEO Mark Tanko and the CTO Niko Tivadar left EKWB. 1 month later, they've pitched up at Corsair, respectively as Vice President and General Manager of Corsair, and also Director of Engineering at Corsair. So it sounds like two very senior roles. But also apparently a bunch of the R&D people at EKWB have also moved across to Corsair. Now EKWB is about 70 or so staff, but they've got less than 10 R&D people. So any number of R&D people leaving them to go to Corsair would seem quite significant. It also suggests that Corsair is being very serious about getting into custom loop hardware. I should be interested to see how this pans out. I like EKWB products. I like what Corsair generally does. So how this shakes out remains to be seen, but it sounds for Corsair very promising. It sounds potentially quite bad news for EKWB. EKWB's founder, Edvard Koenig, has returned, because as far as I'm aware, he's taken a back seat from the company entirely. But he's now returned as CEO, so clearly he's jumped into the fray, and fair play to him for doing that. But it sounds like turmoil in the custom loop hardware side of things, and it means that CES, there should be some gossip going on there. I'm looking forward to this one. Back to AMD. So just last week I was saying that there were leaks about Mobile Ryzen APU, 4 different models, Ryzen 5, 3 and 7, all with a G or a U suffix to the model code. And it was like, oh, this sounds interesting, what's going on here? It turns out that they weren't rumours at all, they were facts, or certainly some of it was, because HP has on sale the HP Envy X360 15 at £899 in the UK. It's probably $899 in America, or even fewer dollars. That's on sale at Amazon, also HP Store. So that's not like been announced. That's out there. That's proper. And the spec therefore is listed. And I understand Acer is going to have a similar-ish product coming along called the Acer Swift 3. Now you can currently buy these models both from Acer and from HP actually with Intel hardware throughout. They've changed the model codes, the precise lengthy model code around, so you can also now get these Ryzen APUs. So the Swift 3, for example, from Acer will have a choice of Ryzen 7 2700U or Ryzen 5 2500U. Now the funny thing here is this. We're talking 15.6-inch screens, and I honestly thought that an AMD APU powered system would be a thin and light, 14-inch, maybe even smaller than that. 15.6, albeit these look very thin, but 15.6 is quite large, and that generally means you've got space to pack in some cooling because you've got the bigger chassis. So generally when you get to 15.6, albeit they can be quite thick and chunky, but I would generally think that a laptop of that size, you'd be expecting it to be sort of GTX 1060 powered. So this is a curious thing for me. The first two companies out of the traps with Ryzen Mobile, and they're going for much larger, albeit thin laptops than I expected to see. Nonetheless, they're out there, interesting to see, and the prices are substantially below £1,000, which makes them look very interesting. As to how they perform, goodness alone knows. The other interesting thing about the NVX360 and the Acer Swift 3 model codes, because they're available in both Intel and AMD forms, it suggests it should be really easy to get two laptops that from a distance look identical but internally are very different, and to do back-to-back comparisons, CPU speed, graphics power, how the screen looks, how long the battery lasts, and so on. So that's interesting. And the fact that the launch, I mean, if you go to AMD's website, it's on the front page of AMD's website as well, but I didn't see any news about this. I mean, it was like, as I say, a week ago, speculation about this rumor. Turns out it's actual fact. It also makes me wonder what's going on, because CES is now really close. The idea they've kind of brought this out around, I mean, this is a really peculiar time of year between Christmas and New Year to bring out new mobile hardware and to launch new laptops, but that's what they've done. It's an extraordinary kind of stealth launch to my mind. I really don't get it, and I should be asking AMD what's going on next time I see them. So there we go. Last week a rumour, and already it's a fact. And another mobile thing, Intel Whiskey Lake. This is a mobile platform that's due mid-2018, which I guess means Computex, but honestly, who knows? Now, we already know about Kaby Lake, so-called 8th gen, Kaby Lake obviously being 7th gen, Coffee Lake being 8th gen. So these Kaby Lake 8th gens, which are 40nm plus process, in a sense, nothing new there, move along. Whiskey Lake would appear to be potentially 40nm plus, but it's really sounding like Whiskey Lake is actually going to be a processor with which we are already familiar, or will be familiar by the time of the launch, with a revised PCH or chipset. As to what function could be brought into that, unless it's some sort of new version of Wi-Fi or some such, really don't know. There's always scope for making them smaller, making them cheaper, making them perform better, saving a bit of power. These are all good things, but I'm not expecting this to be a radical change. I mean, for example, I'm not expecting this to be including AMD graphics, which would be very interesting. But as things stand, Whiskey Lake is an name that's just kind of popped up in the last couple of weeks. And as to what it means, apart from the fact it's mobile mid-2018, do not know. But looking forward to seeing. And then we have looking back on 2017. I'm not going to do Leo's awards for anything because KitGuru's done awards and that's done and dusted. We have, however, had a few products in the very last few weeks that have been unexpectedly good and that deserve a big pat on the back. The Seasonic 600-watt fanless power supply, prime titanium, blooming brilliant. And also I've just recently seen the Fractal Design Define R6 case, which I love to bits, and it turns out so do a great many other reviewers. So that is a big thumbs up. A brilliant way to end the year, actually. Very pleased with both of those. But as a general rattling down the list of things that have kind of caught me eye through the years. So AMD Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 5, big thumbs up, big pat on the back, success, and therefore this apparent die shrink that's coming very shortly, the Ryzen Plus. The 2000 series, looking forward to seeing that. A revision to a good thing should be better, and that's happy. Obviously, AMD Vega Radeon graphics, that not good. I mean, that bad. and therefore, sadly, buy yourself a GTX 1080 or GTX 1080 Ti if you want proper graphics. That's just a fact of life. Tragically, it does mean that 4K gaming is still hard. A real proper hardcore game at 4K with image quality high will flog a 1080 Ti badly. It's just a sad thing, and yet SLI, no thanks. So you're still into the realms, even with the 1080 Ti and £750 worth of graphics card, of having to mess around with graphics settings. And a Titan XP, you can't recommend that for a gamer. It's just insane. Far too much money. Anyway, so NVIDIA, as we've said many times, is ruling the roost with gaming graphics. This is a fact. And they clearly have got bored. Hence, we had the GTX 1070 Ti. And now I've just seen news of a 1060 with 5 gigabytes of memory. They've cut the memory bus from it's a 160-bit memory bus rather, which means essentially this GTX 1060 with 5 gig of memory appears to have the figures of a GTX 1060 conventional with 3 gig of memory. What on earth is going on? I mean, quite clearly NVIDIA is just bored. They're just making up new products. I kind of can't blame them. I kind of want to blame them. I really don't want to see much more of this. I mean, thank goodness the year's ending, but no doubt we're going to see this going on through next year. So I think we should start a competition to predict the next ridiculous graphics card from NVIDIA. And it's going to sell, no doubt. It'll make them money. That's just a painful thought, but such is life. Intel Coffee Lake. Now, the launch turned out to be the biggest paper launch that I've ever known. I was actually mildly appalled. You expect that processors might take a week or two to come through to stock, but it's just beyond silly. And quite clearly, Intel was just burning Kaby Lake down just so they could get back in the game really against Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7. Not good, but you understand it. The thing of Z270 Kaby Lake, Z370 Coffee Lake, annoying, and that's going to continue to be annoying. But the trouble is that when Z390 comes along in the near future, I think that's going to be more annoyance, because I think there are going to be people that bought a Z370 for Coffee Lake and who didn't want to buy that motherboard. They did buy it because they had to, and then they're going to want to buy the Z390, and they're going to be very frustrated people. That's my prediction. Back to AMD, Threadripper. I mean, yes, I like it. I'm disappointed that overclocking Threadripper, you get about an extra 200 megahertz for one heck of a lot more power, a load more heat. Overclocking Threadripper is a disappointment. So basically, when you get your Threadripper, run it out of the box, be impressed by the cores all hammering away. That's good. If there's going to be a revision to Threadripper that increases the clock speed, past 4 gigahertz, should we see this, that will be very good news. I really hope that comes along, because the 1 gigahertz gulf between AMD and Intel, that does hurt. An AMD core and an Intel core are not the same thing at present. Threadripper was a real breath of fresh air in 2017. I can only thank AMD for that. Intel, on the other hand, Optane. I mean, this thing about looks like an M.2 SSD for caching your hard drive. I still do not understand that. The one bit of Optane I'm interested in seeing, which is Optane DIMMs, I suspect we're going to see that at the end of 2018, but I'm not actually certain. I'm interested in seeing that just to see what on earth happens. But I mean, the actual Optane we have seen so far, not only is it a product I have no interest in, I received an Optane M.2 along with the Coffee Lake review processors. I've not used it because I boot off SSD. I'm not going to use it to cache a hard drive. I'm not using hard drive. Just not interested. And the trouble for me is that it means that Optane, the name has been besmirched. So if another Optane DIMMs being the obvious one, comes along that's good, you're going to have to kind of get over the hurdle of different Optane, better Optane, maybe. We shall see, but I think that's a long way off in the future. But I do want to see Optane DIMMs, but Optane for caching hard drives, not interested. And then we've got RAM prices. Now, RAM prices have been terribly high. The problem we've got with RAM and SSD is there are very few manufacturers in the market making. I mean, there are 3 manufacturers of RAM chips, and there are about 5 NAND flash makers, and it's really hurting. So kits that where before you'd say, do I want 16 gig or 32 gig, or pay the bit extra for 32 gig, the price differential is colossal and painful. So you stick with 16 gig or maybe 8 gig. And you're seeing it with PCs that are coming with single channel memory rather than dual channel memory, and so on and so forth. Memory prices Painful, and therefore the innovation has been what? RGB lighting. Now I have to say that G.Skill Trident Z RGB is blimmin' lovely, and Corsair's got some good RGB as well. So the RGB stuff, I'm not against it, but the idea that that is the innovation, it's DDR4 3200 or maybe 3600 with lights, and that's it, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Painful. Similarly, SSDs. I mean, I've just bought a 1 terabyte the other day, a Samsung 960 Evo, for what struck me as quite a lot of money. But the 960 Pro was a lot more money, so I went with the Evo because the Pro, the benefit for the extra money was just no thanks. But what I really want is 2 terabytes of M.2, 4 terabytes of M.2. Not 1 is your limit, 2 if you're prepared to break the bank. The capacity increases just not happening. We need to move on with this 3D NAND faster. 96 layer is being trialed now, I believe. It needs to be in production. I mean, I know saying this sounds ridiculous. And Toshiba obviously has just sold its NAND business off to Bain Capital, so we're going to see how that one pans out. But progress is just glacial. And until we see progress, particularly in SSDs, we're not going to get the different form factors that we want to see. We're going to see cases with bunches of drive bays from here to eternity. People complain still with saying, oh, you've only got 6 drive bays. That's no good. Mind you, there's still an optical drive bay, so what does that mean? But the sooner we get M.2s with proper capacities at sensible prices, we can change the form factor of the PC quite successfully. As things stand, it's going to be 10 years at this rate. It's going to take a lifetime. And I haven't got 10 years to waste. So that's a slightly depressing note. There have been good things this year. There have been some real downers. But the stagnation in memory and SSD, for me personally, is one of the sort of more disappointing aspects that people haven't really been focusing on. But overall, I'm really looking forward to CES. I am wondering what on earth AMD is going to be showing, because it rather seems as though half the cats are out the bag already. If they've got something else up their sleeve, looking forward to seeing it. I'm not expecting anything great from Nvidia or from Intel. I was really banking on AMD actually having some surprises, but it appears between Christmas and New Year, those cats are out of the bag. Funny old life. That was Leo Says. I'm Leo Waldett for KitGuru. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. Do have a happy new year.